So my name is Vicky Chan. I am a management consultant in Canberra. I have been in the industry for 10 plus years. Coming from Taiwan but growing up in Australia, I have the opportunity to enjoy what's available and offered in Canberra. And my free time, I love fostering dogs, so seeing lots of puppies in and out of my house. I have come to know Anna Carr through a personal development program, and we've known each other for 8 years since we first met each other. So when I first heard about the being profile, I was curious because the word being, and it reminded me that someone told me once that we are actually human beings and we're not human doings. So I got interest in looking at who I am as a human being. And Anna provided me with additional information, sent me through to the website to have a look at the content, and it was all about ontology, which is an area that I have a personal interest in. So while I was answering the questionnaire, what came up immediately is I actually have to deal with myself. And actually being frank and honest with myself, there were times where I look at the answer and thought, maybe I should have answered what I believe is the right answer, but then catch myself going, okay, actually that's not what comes to mind when the question popped up, and I should, if I wanted to improve myself, I should be honest and answer truthfully. So it was really interesting. It was a lot of questions to go through, and it actually made me think and have a review of myself at the time. So Anna made the review process very welcoming. I walked in, the room was set up. I felt a really great space to be able to have an open conversation with her. She had a very gentle approach. She gave me an overview of the profile, the framework, what it meant for me, and then we start going into the details of what each of the schools were like. I think the highlight of the moment, there are half of the answers I kind of expected that it is the way it is, knowing myself for the last 30 odd years. But there are some answers where it was a moment of realization. One particular one is I've known myself as someone who's quite confident, but throughout my career, especially around my performance review, I've often get feedbacks from my managers about how I was quiet, introvert, and should be more present and more out there. And when we're reviewing the secondary scores, it clearly showed up that how I perceive myself and how others perceive me are quite different. So then it would explain why I have always received the performance feedback that I have, and now there's an access for me to look at how I could improve that. So after seeing the result of my being profile exercise, I have the opportunity to put myself more out there with my colleagues. I have to be quite honest, I'm ambitious. I wanted to achieve great work in my career, and being perceived as shy and introvert sometimes doesn't get me where I wanted to get to. And so I can now see that being proactive in engaging with my colleagues, being more proactive with my managers in terms of the level of communication, because it was clear that what I thought was sufficient wasn't sufficient from others' perspective. Doing the being profile debrief with Anna, she managed to pick up a theme as we were reviewing the scores, and it was very consistent that in terms of my communication with others and my affirmativeness with others was throughout. And there's also the level of love that I was unwilling to give to people, and I do keep people at arm's length. So as we were reviewing, she had noted down the areas or the score that are interrelated with each other and also demonstrate how they interrelated with each other to better provide me with a structure in future coaching. From my perspective, being profile is beneficial for both at a personal and professional level, and an opportunity to gain insight to yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, the opportunity to become a better person, a better version of yourself. The Being Profile questionnaires provides you an insight into how one would look at yourself in the area of love, satisfaction, fulfillment, communication, and it is both great for personal and professional level, and it has a very pragmatic method and framework to look into areas of yourself that wasn't available or wasn't very apparent. It's like bringing something from the background to the foreground so that you have the power to do something with it. With my interest in ontology, I'm a firm believer that context is everything in what I do and how I work, and knowing the being of who I am, which drives the actions I do, this gives me an opportunity to really explore. So I think I'm a very process-driven person, and I live through my life in efficiency, and it's always do this, do that. And sometimes I can drain myself in a lot of doings, and I just find that I'm like a working bee but with nowhere to go. And having been exposed to ontology and look at who I'm being or the context that's driving my behavior, it allows me to, pause, stop, rethink, plan, and actually make my actions a lot more meaningful than just a hamster in a wheel churning through life. And that's not what I'm committed to. So one of the secondary ways of being is being assertive. And knowing my assertiveness result was on the lower end of an average, I have had the opportunity to impact that, especially around work and in meetings. I walked into a meeting with a director today, and we were reviewing this new engagement. In the program, there is an area that seemingly was missing. And in the past, from my culture, I would have had just obeyed to a hierarchy and kept my mouth shut, and doesn't think that it was my place to point out the obvious. But having completed the Being Profile exercise, I walked in and decided that if I don't raise the concern, then it's going to go unnoticed and it's going to have an impact in how we execute our project. So the result was that I had an interesting conversation with the director. We got into the detail of how we can include my implementation or mitigation of the concern into how we execute the project. We spent more time talking about the culture of the client and why it was not obvious to me that the area of business change was documented or articulated explicitly. So I get to understand where he was coming from. He gets to do that to me as well, and we are on the same page and having a great plan to go ahead to implement it next week. Walking out of that meeting, I was intrigued with myself being able to speak up, but also I actually didn't die from it. It was scary to raise the concern, but I survived, and it was really fulfilling. And because this is a new job for me, a new director, it gave me an opportunity to get to know him more. And I think we've got something going between the two of us. I think it's great. So I think the Being Profile is suitable for anyone whether you're starting at the beginning of your career, you're in the middle of the role thinking whether you wanted to change jobs, staying in the same place, or you're a senior executive, because I think different level provides different context. And people, when you get to an executive level, you look at, partake in executive coaching. I think being profile provides that executive coaching for what you need to be successful as a leader in the organization or the community you're in. And if you're thinking whether you should change career, change your job, whether to be enthusiastic to climb the corporate ladder, being profile gives you the access to look at what's the next step for you, like giving you a mirror of what people would expect of you. And if this is new and you've just started your career and you are wondering how to be or who to be and how can you have a great start, well, the being profile gives a really good framework in how you operate, and it actually gives you a head start in looking at the areas that one should pay attention to. So I think it's been great having the experience and the review. I know that workplace culture and leadership is a big discussion right now in any organization, and it is one of the areas that people don't learn from textbook. And being profile will give us the ability to be able to train and develop our managers and leadership in fulfilling on the visions of the company and giving our junior employees an opportunity to discover themselves and where they can improve and better perform to be a good corporate citizen.